So I continue here with Jonathan and David relationship, and I get yeah I had it just going by chapter now, but I think a lot of the lesson plans were they group like all the way through 27 or something. So, but we're taking a little slower pace. In what way do you agree or disagree with the conventional wisdom that when the going gets tough, you find out who your real friends are? Yes or no? Maybe.
Well, to me, I mean, I think it'd be true for everybody. Yeah, it's a learning moment. There are those that are going to stick right by you, and there are those that you look over your shoulder and say, "Where did they go?"
Yeah.
They're gone, and sometimes that's a really a moment of growth because some of those that you were assured in your mind that were going to be people that'll be there for you were not there for you.
Yeah.
It's like when you're moving into a new house, and then you know who your friends are.
Yeah, and on the other end, guys used to tell me this. You want to find out who your friends are, build a swimming pool or get a boat.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. When you need a long talk with a best friend, where do you go?
I don't know. I just did that this week. I have a guy that's really did. I have two guys I'm working with right now, and I went right to their house,
Oh,
spoke to them on their grounds. They're much more comfortable then, and you start out with good things before you get into the tough things.
yeah. Well, I know I'm it's one guy I used to meet with pretty regularly. Um, Not sure he's a best friend, but we go and we usually discuss some religious book we're reading. I think one which we mentioned to you guys, some was about reading the Bible with Jesus or Rabbi Jesus, and but he and I we would go and at Starbucks and meet and talk about the book and just talk in general. But there were times that both of us were bawling in Starbucks there. We probably should have found a better place to go, but so
Yeah. Well, the other two I mentioned, one had just recently, 6 months ago, tried to actually had succeeded, but they brought him back. He committed suicide, and so I've been working with him, and he's just doing marvelously well. And I meet
uh,
with him in his house. I always tell him when I come, have the coffee on because we're going to drink a lot of coffee. So this week I met with him from 10 in the morning until 2.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And the other guy is a guy that's in depression. He's not committed suicide, but he's convinced that he's got a lung biopsy coming up, and he's convinced he's going to disappoint his wife and he's going to die. And so I'm working with him too.
Yeah, that was part of not that Marlon shared with me, but when we had dinner with them, Brenda had shared with Susan because Marlon and I were talking, and the women were Brenda and Susan talking, and she was sharing how upset he was that he wasn't going to be able to take care of Brenda,
Mhm.
because of his illness. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and as you get older and you have these plans for retirement, and it's a partnership thing. And
Mhm.
if you get sick and those things have to be crossed off the list, somebody like he is feeling guilty about that because he's
yeah,
not sure they can travel like they did before, and they have a place in Florida, and they're trying to decide should they. What they do is they do 6 months and one day in Florida, and then they come back in the summer months here. And they're going through all kinds. They're trying to figure out, well, should we just stay in Florida and live out our lives there, or should we keep going back and forth? You know, they got grandkids here. It's not an easy deal when you really think
No.
about retirement and you know what now you're going to do when you've been so a lot of things dictate your busyness when you are working and you have family that you're taking care of and then all of a sudden you know that's all out the window and so you got to recreate your own life.
Yeah. Well, I know when he was, well, I mean, since the time I've known him, Marlon, um, he and Brenda used to go, he had a like I forget, it was one of those big motorcycles, kind of like a V4 or something, I think. And then he had a trailer he pulled on the motorcycle, and so they would go all over the country on a motorcycle before he finally got tired of that maybe 10 years ago. But yeah, so
Wow. Yeah. Well, and I will admit that sometimes the things you thought were going to be great are not so. When I retired, still in Indianapolis, still at our place, I played golf with the guys almost, you know, almost every other day. We were out on the golf course, and after about two
uh,
weeks of that, it was like eating too much ice cream. I was like, and
yeah.
Debbie said, Debbie said, yeah, she looked at me and she said, "You don't seem very happy." I said, "You know, this retirement thing is nuts. I don't like it at all." You know, I don't want to play golf every day. They love it, I think, but I don't. It's,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it can be a lot of work. So
oh, you know, well, you would play golf and then you go and sit in the clubhouse and I'm sitting there, my mind is racing. It's like, what should I be doing? What should I be doing?
yeah.
I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing something else.
Mhm.
So when growing up, did you have any secret ways of communicating with your friends? Do you still use coded messages? What for?
That's a question for the girls.
Well, except I remember back before cell phones, and you know, if your parents or something wanted you were taking a trip with friends, you know, wanted to know you arrived safely. You usually do a collect call. Yeah, this is Dwight.
Right.
We arrived safely. We, you know, something like that. So then they'd ask, well, we accept a call from Dwight. We arrived safely, and then they say no, they weren't. But then they know that kind of like that commercial. I think a commercial's using that same thing. But
Yeah.
Well,
We have,
now what we
Yeah,
have is when I call people, they have a caller ID and they go, "Oh, I'm not going to answer that."
yeah,
That-
yeah,
my
That's
my
scary.
wife my wife uses the coded message with our grandkids, and it's called, I'm going to give you a different language that will be written, and only we will know it. It's called cursive.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
That's the only way they get it nowadays.
Oh, is that
yeah.
true? That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what
my
happened?
best
Yeah,
friend and I had my best friend and I had a thing that like we'd always play in the alley, whether it's basketball or whatever, and then if there were people like kids that would come and play that we didn't want to play with, we'd say we got to be going, which is GOTS, and then him and I would go into our houses and then stay inside for 5 minutes and come out, and then everybody'd be gone. So that was always kind of funny.
Mhm.
what was that? We gots to be going. Is that just?
Got to be going, GOTS. And then that was the clue to go in the house and then come out 5 minutes later. Always laugh about it.
And they never thought to come back and check.
No, they didn't.
Okay, Rick, this is your part here.
Oh, wow. Got a good one here. All right, here we go. David is on the run. When it became obvious that Saul had ill intentions towards him, he ran to Samuel. Perhaps in order to confirm his anointing and divine favor. In this text, he runs to Jonathan for another attempt of reconciliation with Saul. Earlier, Jonathan showed a willingness to act as a mediator between David and Saul. David was earnestly willing and ready to try any means necessary to resolve the conflict between himself and Saul, as the subsequent narratives reveal repeatedly. This is one more attempt of his to give reason and calm a chance, and he hopes Jonathan will be able to help. At the beginning of this text, Jonathan appears unconvinced that Saul really intends to do harm to David, and only the events of the new moon festival persuade him that he must take action to protect David. Jonathan's loyalty demanded a willingness to help in times of need. David was desperate. He needed help. In this desperate hour, would Jonathan help him? In his eyes, the public Jonathan was the heir to the throne, and David was a threat to Jonathan's claim to power. But the two young men had pledged toward an oath of friendship. They would always be friends, looking after the welfare and meeting the needs of one another. Now their friendship was to be tested. Jonathan's father, King Saul, was fiercely pursuing David, seeking to kill him. Where would Jonathan stand? With his father? Or would he come to the aid of his close friend in an hour of desperate need? Jonathan had earlier made a commitment of loyalty to David. Now the depth of his commitment and loyalty was to be tested. Would he be willing to help David in his hour of need? These questions are dramatically answered throughout this scripture.
All right. Thanks, Rick. All right. Yeah.
So let's find out what happens, right?
Yeah.
David fled from Naoth and Ramah and came to Jonathan and asked, "What have I done? What did I do wrong? How have I sinned against your father so that he wants to take my life?" Jonathan said to him, "No, you won't die. Listen, my father doesn't do anything, great or small, without telling me, so why would he hide this matter from me? This can't be true." But David said, "Your father certainly knows that you have come to look favorably on me. He has said, 'Jonathan must not know this, or else he will be grieved.'" David also swore, "As surely as the Lord lives, as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death." Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." So David took him. "Look, tomorrow is the new moon, and I'm supposed to sit down and eat with the king. Instead, let me go, and I'll hide in the field until the third night. If your father misses me at all, say, 'David urgently requested my permission to quickly go to his town, Bethlehem, for an annual sacrifice there involving the whole clan.' If he says, 'Good,' then your servant is safe. But if he becomes angry, you will know he has evil intentions. Deal faithfully with your servant, for you have brought me into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I have done anything wrong, then kill me yourself. Why take me to your father?" "No," Jonathan responded. "If I ever find out my father has evil intentions against you, won't I tell you about it?" So David asked Jonathan, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" He answered David, "Come on, let us go out to the field." So both of them went out to the field. "By the Lord, the God of Israel, I will sound out my father by this time tomorrow or the next day. If I find out that he is favorable towards you, will I not send for you and tell you? If my father intends to bring evil on you, may God punish Jonathan and do severely if I do not tell you and send you away so that you may go in peace. May the Lord be with you just as he was with my father. If I continue to live, treat me with the Lord's faithful love. But if I die, don't ever withdraw your faithful love from my household, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth." Then Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord hold David's enemies accountable." Jonathan once again swore to David in his love for him because he loved him as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said to him, "Tomorrow is the new moon. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. The following day, hurry down and go to the place where you hid on the day this incident began and stay beside the rock of Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows beside it as if I'm aiming at a target. Then I will send the young man and say, 'Go and find the arrows.' Now, if I expressly say to the young man, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, get them,' then come back as the Lord lives. It is safe for you, and there is no problem. But if I say this to the youth, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then go, for the Lord is sending you away. As for the matter you and I have spoken about, the Lord will be a witness between you and me forever." So David hid in the field. That's a complex messaging system. At the new moon, the king sat down to eat the meal. He sat at his usual place on the seat by the wall. Jonathan sat facing him, and Abner took his place beside Saul. But David's place was empty. Saul did not say anything that day because he thought, something unexpected has happened. He must be ceremonially unclean. Yes, that's it. He is unclean. However, the day after the new moon, the second day, David's place was still empty, and Saul asked his son Jonathan, why didn't Jesse's son come to the meal either yesterday or today? Jonathan answered, David asked for my permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, please let me go because our clan is holding a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has told me to be there. So now, if you are pleased with me, let me go so I can see my brothers. That's why he didn't come to the king's table. Then Saul became angry with Jonathan and shouted, you son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Don't I know that you are siding with Jesse's son, so your own shame and to disgrace your mother? Every day Jesse's son lives on earth, you and your kinship are not secure. Now send for him and bring him to me. He deserves to die. Jonathan answered his father back, why is he to be killed? What has he done? Then Saul threw a spear at Jonathan to kill him. So he knew that his father was determined to kill David. He got up from the table in fierce anger and did not eat any food that second day of the new moon, for he was grieved because of his father's shameful behavior towards David. In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for an appointed meeting with David. A small young man was with him. He said to the young man, run and find the arrows I'm shooting. As the young man ran, Jonathan shot an arrow beyond him. He came to the location of the arrow that Jonathan had shot, but Jonathan called to him and said, the arrow is beyond you, isn't it? Then Jonathan called to him, hurry up and don't stop. Jonathan's young man picked up the arrow and returned to his master. He did not know anything. Only Jonathan and David knew the arrangement. Then Jonathan gave his equipment to the young man who was with him and said, go, take it back to the city. When the young man had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone easel, fell with his face to the ground, and bowed 3 times. Then he and Jonathan kissed each other and wept with each other, though David wept more. Jonathan then said to David, go in the assurance the 2 of us pledged in the name of the Lord when we said, the Lord will be a witness between you and me and between my offspring and your offspring forever. Then David left and Jonathan went into the city.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
Woo!
Yeah, a lot going on there. And remember, one of the commentaries, again, at the beginning, talked about them being both young men, but really there was probably like 20 years, 15, 20 years difference between Jonathan and David. Because Jonathan was already fighting and in some of the battles. And as we talked before, that David wasn't at the battle, except when he went to bring food to his brothers and fight Goliath. But the age of that you had to serve time in the military was 20, so he was under 20, still a teenager. So, all right, and yeah, this is a map, and I guess this is some of these things we'll be covering. David's flight from Saul goes through about chapter 27, it looks like. So we'll have this map. So all right, let's see. What's the difference between David and Jonathan's perceptions of Saul's behavior? So David fled from Naomoth and Ramah and came to Jonathan and asked, what have I done? What did I do wrong? How have I sinned against your father so that he wants to take my life? And Jonathan said, no, you won't die. Listen, my father doesn't do anything, great or small, without telling me. So why would he hide this matter from me? This can't be true. What's the difference?
Kind of feels like Jonathan has ignored Saul's world and the way he acted for a long time, or just kept seeing him as infallible as his father.
Yeah.
Because Saul hasn't been a nice guy for a long time.
Yeah. How do you think Jonathan felt, and this ties in this previous question, upon hearing David's anguish-filled complaint against Saul, who does he prefer to trust at this point, and why? And I'll just pull this from last week's lesson. Remember in chapter 19, Saul listens to Jonathan's advice about David and swore an oath. He says, as surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed. So like Greg was saying, he's not going to believe that his father was actually going to do that, especially since he swore an oath to him, to his son, that he wouldn't kill David.
Well, that was true. He never did kill David.
Yeah.
The oath was fulfilled, even though he tried.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even the fact that he would think he had to give an oath was already indicating that he was kind of
Tempted.
leaning against him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Shakespeare should.
He thinks thou protest too much.
But yeah. So David's final estimation of his predicament, which I just read that, or we read it again. Your father certainly knows you have to come look favorably on me. He has said Jonathan must know of this, or else he will be grieved. David also swore, as surely as the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, there is but a step between me and death. So he was really feeling threatened.
Talk about Shakespeare. That sounds like Shakespeare's writing.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Kind of?
Yeah.
Any interpretation of Jonathan's blessing of David in verse 13? Let me see. By the Lord God, the God of Israel, I'll sound out my father by this time tomorrow and the next day. If I found out he is favorable toward you, will I not send for you and tell you? If my father intends to bring evil on you, may God punish Jonathan and do so severely if I do not tell you and send you away, so you may go in peace. May the Lord be with you, just as he was with my father. So any interpretation of his blessing of David. I think maybe what I was going here is that it appears he observed, or he knows in his mind that God was with his father at some point, but now, and he doesn't know David was anointed, so he's asking that the Lord be with him as he was with his father. So it's kind of suspecting, or I don't know, thinking that, I don't know, that's normally that the spirit was with the Lord was with the king, but so maybe he knows something's going to happen, and well, Saul's alluded to that several times, that David's popularity, people might make him king. So why are verses 14 to 15 so important to David? So if I continue to live, treat me with the Lord's faithful love, but if I die, don't ever withdraw your faithful love from my household, not even when the Lord cuts off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth. So what was I looking for here? Why are 14 and 15 so important to David? And this is a Jonathan, I think, talking. Okay, we'll come. There's something similar to this at the end of this passage too. We'll get back to that. So here's one for if you found out your father was threatening to kill your best friend, how would you feel?
Well, that's a tough one. That never happened. So it's kind of like,
Well, certainly conflicted, or I don't know whether you ever had the conversation with your parents when you were younger about, well, I don't want you hanging out with so and so, he's not a good influencer, he's a troublemaker, or he's just going to get you in trouble. Um,
I'd feel a lot worse after my father threw a spear at me.
yeah. Yeah, that's
That's kind of the nail in the coffin there.
yeah,
We spend a lot of time on father and absentee fathers and absenteeism and fathers that abuse their kids, and a lot of what we're talking about even fits within there. And that we talk about spiritual death, bodily death, and a lot of what you're talking about is when you have a friend, even if your friend's not perfectly a good kid or a good guy or a good person, whatever, spiritual would be you're going to work with them no matter what.
yeah,
And you're going to remain to be their friend. They're your neighbor, you're going to be the friend, and you're going to try to spiritually work with them. But if you cut them off from your life, that's completely spiritual death. And
yeah,
so when I look at that last sentence and he talks about no matter if I'm alive or not, don't spiritually cut me off with my family or my friends or whatever, or even my enemies. So I read a lot of that into this, and we talk about a lot about father wound. So Jonathan had a father wound in that he believed in his father, the good things, and was very hard for him to come around to the bad things. But sooner or later, he begins to see it through David's test. And we've all done that, by the way. We've all said to somebody, well, I know somebody, if I tell him this, I'm going to know right away. If I tell him and then I hear it from everybody else, I'm going to say, hey, don't tell anybody. And then everybody hears it, then you can't trust him anymore. So kind of David's in a roundabout way kind of is going through that, saying, hey, I'm going to show you that your dad does mean to kill me.
yeah,
There's another piece of this that when you're younger, whether you know it or not, your father's trying to protect you from things that maybe you couldn't resist, right?
yeah,
And so and it seems to me in the times of Saul and Jonathan and David, the father had an extended arm. In other words, much later in your life as a son, to where they would kind of direct than potentially we do today. So there's part of this that you look to your father to say, well, he must be wiser than I am anyway, so there must be a reason for this. Because I've had that situation when I was young, when my dad said, hey, you don't want to be around these folks. And the interesting thing was, similar to Saul as a king, my dad was a principal. He knew all the kids, he knew the families. And so I learned to trust what he said. And, you know, I never would have broken that trust, which is kind of what Jonathan did with him. But my dad obviously didn't uh, go off the deep end in life. So it's a very complicated thing. I was thinking of my mentee Braden when Gary was talking about all this stuff, and it's complicated. The whole thing is very complicated.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I agree with Greg saying, look at our own fathers. I mean, I had a devoted father that was there for me all the time, but I want to tell you, there are things about my father I would not want to replicate. He went through World War II. He was a great hero and a patriot, and he one of the biggest racist guys I've ever known. Because when he came out of the service, in those days, in the 40s, uh, they had their own platoons for minority guys. They had separate air forces for minority guys. But they never my dad always referred to black guys as colored boys. So when when war was over, he was in Aberdeen, Maryland, and he was had boot camp there, and he would always come, and I'd remember as a kid, so he'd say, "We got this colored boy who's really good. I like this colored boy," and I'd say, "Well, Dad, what color is he?" He'd get very upset with me, and he'd say, "Well, you know what I'm talking about." I said, "Yeah, I'm afraid I do," but he's not a colored boy.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So, so I had a lot of respect. I still do. I wouldn't trade my dad for anything, but I want to tell you, he had some moments that
yeah,
I wouldn't quite agree with.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, when you realized your father was doing this to save the throne for you, how would you have felt, or any different? Or it's kind of like what Greg was saying.
Hmm.
It was kind of wanting to do because he didn't want his son to lose the throne, so wanted what was best for him for the future of his son.
It makes you wonder if Jonathan was wiser than his dad and realized that David would have made a better king than him.
Yeah,
We're doing Romans at another Bible study I do, and we last week we talked something that's very similar to this. Is that when we look to God, you look to God. You instead of seeking God for what you'd like to happen to you, you should seek God to find out what God wants us to do for Him. And if He has already said, David is going to be that next king, do you work against God or do you work for yourself?
right. Good point. Okay. So this is a multiple choice question. It's the only question that pulled together from this, but there's a lot happening in here. So if you knew the king was trying to kill you, would you trust the location of your hiding place to his son? And this is some multiple choice answers here. Yes, if you can't trust your best friend, you really got a problem. No, you really can't depend on anyone but yourself. Only if I had a promise like Jonathan made. So, any thoughts on you? If you knew your best friend's father was trying to kill you, would you trust him with the location of where you were hiding?
Yeah, I think this is complex too because David realized that Jonathan was not able to see the evil in Saul because he just confessed that, right?
Yeah,
So this is tough. I mean, when you read the story, that's the one thing that stands out that doesn't make sense. Okay, I'm gonna tell this guy who's the son of the man that wants to kill me where I'm gonna exactly where I'm gonna be sitting and which rock I'm behind. It's
yeah,
like, huh.
yeah.
Mm.
All right, that's
And he knows David's going to take his position, right?
he assumes that. I don't think it's I mean,
He does know that, but I'm trying to think when that happens. Because
oh,
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he comes back and he's happy to be second in command and under David. Does that
yeah,
come later?
maybe it does, but I think, yeah, we did talk about that. You're right, Steve. We did talk about that because when Jonathan at some point gave David his clothing,
Yeah.
his father gave the David his armor, but Jonathan gave David his clothing or his sword or some other things, and that was like transferring his
Inheritance, so to speak.
yeah, exactly. Thanks. I was having trouble coming up with that word. Transferring his inheritance to David. So yeah, I
I
think
mean, so the amazing thing is the amount of faith that Jonathan has in God's plan, even though it directly impacts his life.
yeah, yeah, adversely.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this whole story here kind of, you know, I'm
Yeah,
going to trust my friend more than my father at this point.
yeah. All right, that's all I had for that part. Which do you think angers Saul more and why? David's absence from the table or his own son collusion with David? Or what higher principle does Saul justifies anger. And let me read this over again. Then Saul became angry with Jonathan, shouted, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman." And some of the other translations says, "You son of a whore." I mean, look how he's disparaging his wife
Right.
as he goes through. "Don't I know that you are siding with Jesse's son to your own shame and to the disgrace of your mother? Every day Jesse's son lives on earth, and your kingship are not secure. You and your kingship are not secure. Now send for him and bring him to me. He deserves to die." So what higher principle does Saul apply to? And you got to think some too here about the times and what happened when there was a change in the king. Any thoughts on that? So this will tie into a question at the end of this section too. So yeah, typically, and actually Herod kind of did this to his own family. He killed off a lot of his sons because he didn't want his sons to try and kill him to become king. So usually when a new king came into power, and usually I guess if it was not a peaceful transition, he would kill off all the former king's family.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so that was typical. So he's kind of Saul's kind of alluding to that. So every day Jesse's son lives on earth, you and your kingship are not secure. So
there's in-laws and outlaws.
in-laws and outlaws, yeah.
Always.
I know you're going to do this. We haven't done it today, but the question I have is that you're going to use Psalms sometimes when David, from the book of Psalms.
Right.
But to me, some of these questions you asked, did David ever pray upon any of this? Or was he not in, parallel to God and close to God yet at this moment? But some of the questions you ask is, what do you think David would do? Well, David in Psalms probably would pray, but
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like in Samuel that First and Second Samuel that he's going to pray on. He's talking to Jonathan, he's talking to other people, but he's not praying upon it. And we always say, well, let me pray upon it. Well, I haven't seen that yet.
Well, he did. I mean, Psalm 59, which we kind of just inserted
Right.
last week's was one of those instances. And then let me see if I can find it here for a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I think-
my answer is in reference to when did David, begin to realize, that he was, no matter what, he was going to be the king, and he needed to utilize God with that. When did that happen?
Yeah, I think, well, this, can you see this screen?
Yep.
Okay, this Alistair Begg says he thinks this might be one that David might have written about this instance or feeling persecution of Saul. It says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Look on me and answer, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep in death. My enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord, for he has been good to me." But so I don't know whether that one was not specifically pointed out in some of the references I was using when we went through David, but this Alistair Begg, when talking about this chapter, thought this might be one of Psalms, Dave. So I think he was praying, Gary, all the time. I mean, because he had all these Psalms during, especially during all this period when he was.
I guess my question is, how does Psalms correspond to this when we read Samuel?
It's a
Is that
collection. It's a
when?
collection of David's. It's a collection of David's writing for his entire life.
So when did he start writing Psalms versus being
Well,
active in Samuel?
remember that David was known as the kid with the lyre. He was writing songs his entire life.
Yeah,
And that's what he probably was singing some of these psalms to that he wrote when he was a shepherd to Saul.
To Saul, right? What soothed Saul's heart and mind? It was David singing and the songs that he wrote. It's like Gary. Psalms was his personal diary throughout his life. And so when you read this story and you read Psalms, they're actually happening at the same time. And that's what Alistair Begg was talking about. You know?
yeah.
So I think go ahead.
No, I would just that's great. And Alistair Begg is a phenomenal guy. So as a pastor and a preacher, so I'm and I see this a little differently now. I mean, even with what Greg's saying is, I can understand why when you read First and Second Samuel, you better have Psalms next to you
Yep.
because that's going to really be your footnote on some of the things that are going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, there's in a lot of future chapters as we go through this, we'll be skipping something from Samuel and redoing a study on a psalm. So
Mm-hmm.
again, we're trying to, since we're going on this life of David journey, that we'll be trying to do that. So what was the final indication to Jonathan that his father's murderous intent was serious?
Hey, catch the spear I'm going to throw at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he just said go long.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Knowing Saul tried to kill him too, why does Jonathan go back instead of going into hiding with David?
That's a dang good question. I was thinking that at the end.
Yeah.
Talk about a kid with courage.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's true. But I think Jonathan had seen this kind of knee-jerk anger from his father before, and it goes away. You know, this is not a sane human being. And one of the things about being insane is the inconsistency of action, right? It's
Yeah.
one moment everything's great and flowers and butterflies, and the next moment it's not. Yeah.
I see this again back what I was talking about. We go to court with these young guys that have been abused by their fathers, or they've just bugged out on them and they're disappear until they need money or something. But you go to court and the judge often will say, look at this kid and say, mainly teenager kid, would say, I'm going to give you an opportunity here. Would you want to go back to the boys' home or do you want to go with your father or you want to go with your mother? And invariably, no bad how bad that situation is at the home, I would tell you the majority of the time they say, I want to go with my father. I want to go with my mother. And they have treated them horribly. And you just sit there and think, wow, that's just, they're getting a square meal, they're getting clothes, they're going to school, they're doing everything structurally right where they were, and they're going to give it up.
They don't know any different.
No. And you see they say Jonathan's going back to his father. Well, that's the same father wound kind of thing. It's his father.
Yeah.
And like we talked about last week, this is another story about is it okay to lie?
Yeah.
Right? Because Jonathan's obviously doing that to his father when he asked him where David is.
Yeah.
Kind of a trap, right?
Yeah. So I think we kind of talked about this too. How do you think Jonathan feels being caught in the middle? I mean, that's a struggle. So he's trying to stay in the middle, I guess. So again, this kind of relates back to something we read earlier back in verse 14, I think. But why is Jonathan reminding David of their pledge in verse 42? How does this turn the covenant relationship around from its original intent? So Jonathan then said to David, "Go in the assurance the two of us pledged in the name of the Lord." When he said, "The Lord will be a witness between you and me and between my offspring and your offspring forever." So why is Jonathan reminding him of this again? And I alluded to it earlier.
Well, there's irony in this because Jonathan is just trying to convince David that, he will protect David. But at the same time, what oath did Jonathan's father break? An
That
oath
he
to the
was,
Lord.
yeah, that I'm
Yeah.
not going to kill David, right?
And
Yeah.
what do you learn from your father? How to act, how to treat people, how to, have your yes be your yes and your no be no. And here it is, so it's an ironic situation. He's trying to convince him with something that he know his father broke.
Yeah, I think that's also what I kind of talked about earlier, is that he knows that David's going to be king. And so he's wanting that, he's implying, remember this oath. This oath wasn't just to protect you, it was to protect me and my family. So that when you become king, even if I'm dead, don't go killing my children. And you remember he did try and protect Jonathan's son.
Right, right.
So David was keeping his part of the vow.
So does anybody else, I'm going through the details of the story, and the story of Marcus Aurelius and Maximus?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is almost the same story, other than the fact that Marcus Aurelius' son kills him to take the throne. But he knew that his father wanted to give it to somebody else. So it's kind of different, but it's kind of the same. It's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was it. So I'll read through these. What does this chapter indicate about the quality of a Jonathan David type friendship? When we experience such a covenant bond with a member of the same sex, or what is the closest you've come to friendship like Jonathan and David's? When is it right to go against authority and obeying God, or lying, I guess? When is it wrong? What elements in civil or familiar disobedience are never right? And do you think your parents are or were totally honest with you at all time? Why, when have you presumed to know their innermost thoughts, only to be proven wrong in a big way? And how did you handle that piercing hurt? So some things to talk about from this passage. Loyal friendship is a rare and valuable valuable gift. And that's from Gary Hammerlich said that. And he also used these two proverbs. Dear friend will love you no matter what, and a family sticks together through all kinds of trouble. And some friendships don't last for long, but there is one loving friend who is joined to your heart closer than any other. And of course, this is also talks about relationships, but also talks about Jesus. Thought one, the lesson for us should be clearly understood. Loyalty demands a willingness to help in times of need. When we are called upon, we must step forth and lend a helping hand. Friendship demands that we help our friends by being there for them, listening to their problems, relieving their pain, sharing in their suffering, lending a helping hand, offering provision and aid, whether food, clothing, housing, or finances. Loyalty demands an unbreakable friendship, a spirit of brotherly love, or we might say friendship demands an unbreakable loyalty, an unbreakable spirit of brotherly love. True friendship demands loyalty that is shatterproof and a brotherly love that is unshakable. Tough love and tough loyalty are traits for true friends. And Jonathan conquered jealousy and envy, but his father did not. What made this difference? The power of God. God has provided a way for jealousy and envy to be conquered, the very same way that all evil is to be overcome through power of the cross and the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. Through the cross, we receive forgiveness for having committed the sins of jealousy and envy. And another thought, Jonathan set a dynamic example for us. He kept his oath, his commitment, his promise, his vow made to David. When we made a promise to a person, we are faithful to our word. Making a promise to a friend or anyone else means just as much as taking a vow or oath. And again, I mentioned Alistair Begg, when he took a different look as he went through this passage. Field's lesson focuses on endurance, encouragement, and hope. And he said, for everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance, and he talked about David's endurance in this passage, and the encouragement that Jonathan received, and then talked about hope. So there's a little bit difference than just focusing on the friendship. And then this is a takeaway card from 2015. God is in control. Much of the takeaway from this passage is about friendship, the example established between Jonathan and David. However, through much of this story, we see God's involvement as mentioned in a couple of passages. In Genesis, it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. And in Romans, it says, and we know that in all things God's worked for the good for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. No worries, God has it. So these are a couple other messages from the passage. So any other thoughts on the passage? Or is everybody okay with us continuing the study, moving the study to be about David?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So am I.
Yep, I'm good.
Okay. All right. And then we move to prayers. I guess you stop the thing, Gary.